Hey guys, today we're gonna do a little film camera show and tell.
Aim, focus, snap. It's as easy as that.
Why is your top button buttoned?
Because if you do YouTube videos about shooting film, you have to button the top button of your flannel shirt. Everyone knows that. This year I have a goal to shoot more film. Last year I think I got really caught up in all the hype of the really amazing cameras that were released on the market, and I sort of felt like maybe I went a little drifted away from what I truly love about photography, just a little bit. How do people do this? I think Matt Day is skinnier than me. For me, shooting with film or with digital cameras that provide the experience that simulates the best parts of shooting film, that's what it's all about. Photography in its pure form, or at least what I consider to be its purest form. Others may disagree, and that's totally okay. But before I start to derail this video into yet another why I shoot film episode, let's just get right into what this episode is really about, and that is my film camera collection. Now, I recently went through a bit of a purge. I sold off a bunch of film cameras I had cluttering up the place, and while I was basically triaging my film camera collection to decide what needed to go and what would stay, I decided I really wanted to make this video. And this is as much for me to look back on in 10 or 20 years to see how my priorities have changed or how my collection has changed than it is for you guys, but hopefully you'll enjoy it as well. So first I'll start out with cameras I keep for sentimental reasons. Then we'll get into cameras I shoot more regularly with. The first camera on the list is this lovely little guy. It's the Ricoh KR10 SE. Guys, it's fine. It used to work, it used to expose film. It doesn't anymore, and let's be honest, it's not the most amazing camera in the world. I'm not necessarily recommending it as your entry point into film camera shooting, but we keep it for a very important reason, and that is that it is Danae's dad's camera that he shot with when he was younger, and she said if I got rid of it, she would kill me. So we keep it. Although it does have a lens that's pretty special, I think. I really like. It's the Helios 44. So I really do want to get this. I need to figure out what's not quite working with this anymore and get it working, if for no other reason than to shoot with this awesome lens that I've heard a lot of things about, but I haven't had a whole lot of opportunity to shoot with it myself. But speaking of my in-laws, next up is this beauty given to me by my in-laws. It's a circa 1920s Kodak Vest Pocket Special. So the story behind this camera is that sometime in November we were woken up to the ungodly hour of 7 a.m. to a phone call on Danae's phone. At the time I thought, okay, who died? Because no one calls us at 7 a.m. They know better. We do not do mornings. And you best remember that. If you ever get the hankering to call us a second before 7:35 a.m., it may not end well for you. So Danae rushed out of the room, and I thought, okay, whatever this is, it's a big deal. But as it turns out, it was my in-laws who were in England on vacation. They just found this really awesome vintage camera store specializing in old cameras and their repair and maintenance. And they had been waiting 3 hours so that they could call Danae at what they thought was a safe hour to ask her opinion and advice on this guy, because they wanted to buy it for me. Now, they didn't need to do that because they know me really well, and they nailed it. They told the shop owner that they wanted something special, something vintage, but that it absolutely had to work. They know me because I'm never going to own a camera and use it for something as lame as Nikkor. No way. If a camera doesn't work, it needs to make room for one that does. So like I said, they asked the guy for something that still works, that's pretty special, and this camera is definitely special. I know that because it says that it's special right here on the label. But really, this is the high-end version of a camera that was kind of like the Canon Rebel of the 1910s and 1920s. If you're going to go on a trip, or if you were a soldier going to war, you went out and you bought yourself a vest pocket Kodak camera. So this guy is the higher-end model. It has a 78mm lens, a 4.5 aperture, which for the time was fairly fast. Has the waist level viewfinder, which isn't really worth a darn. It also has this cool little pen that allowed you to actually autograph. You know, move this slide and you'd be able to autograph or write notes on the actual negative, which is, it's pretty cool. I don't know, it's probably comparable to, the embedded date in some of those point and shoots of the 80s. But still an interesting concept. You know, the best gifts are more than the physical form they take, the love, time, and thought that goes into their selection. That's really what makes them special. So I'm excited to have this for those reasons. But as you can see, it's got a ton of character and it's just so cool on its own. I'm really excited to shoot with it. The only thing stopping me is the roll of 127 film coming to me from somewhere in Israel, I think. This next camera is also a foldable camera. It was also a gift, and so has sentimental value. Danae got me this 2 years ago for Christmas. This is the Voigtlander Vitessa. It is working. I've shot with this a handful of times. I'm sure I will shoot with it again. Well, it does work. The shutter only works at speeds faster than, I want to say, a 15th of a second, which is totally fine. I don't think I'm ever going to be hand-holding this guy for less than a 100th of a second. The photos I've nabbed with it look pretty good and plenty sharp, and it's a pleasant camera to handle and to hold. It's quirky though as well. To cock the shutter, you've got this smokestack style shutter mechanism, and that's, you know, interesting. It's definitely a conversation starter. One time I was shooting this in Japantown in San Francisco, and I got this shot of a woman doing some street style photography of a model. The photographer got really upset though that I had taken a photo of her taking photos of her model, and she chased me down and basically demanded to see the photo. So I showed her that this was a very odd film camera and that I'd be happy to show her the film once developed, but I couldn't show her the shot yet. Once she realized that it was a film camera though, for some reason that changed everything. She smiled and asked me about it, and I often reflect on that. What was it about the fact that I had taken the photo on film instead of digital that had softened her anger? And I think that I know why now. Film changes hearts, you guys. Film is the answer to all of our problems. Okay, so now we get into the specialized cameras. These are cameras that I don't shoot with very often because they have a very specialized role. And the first camera I have here is very dusty. It's the Fujifilm Instax Wide. This camera is not mine. This camera is Danae's, and I'll be honest, we haven't used this very much. I think we really like the idea of shooting Polaroids, but for whatever reason, we just don't. That's gonna change though. We do have a Polaroid photo duel planned, or at least talked about, so stay tuned for that. That will come in 2019, I can guarantee it. Next up, we have my Zenit 12XP, a very solid, very reliable Russian camera with a very special lens that needs to be cleaned. With a very special lens that is straight out of Chernobyl and very radioactive. This is the Super Takuma 50mm 1.4, very, very good lens. So the story on this one is that I reached out to a fellow YouTuber I really like, Ade Turrent. You can find his channel under the name Old Cameras. And I asked him if he'd be interested in doing a double exposure film swap. He totally agreed. He suggested this camera as the one to use. We wanted to use the same camera, so I went out and got one specifically for that. He sent me his initially exposed roll, and I've loaded it in. I have taken 3 shots. Ade, my friend, I'm so sorry. 2018 though, I mean, it just sort of got away from me. But I am gonna get this roll finished soon and develop it, and I look forward to showing that double exposure film thing we did together. Next up, we have the Yashica Mimi. This is my most recent addition. Some of you will have seen a photo duel that Danae and I put out recently. We went out and bought some thrift store finds, some point and shoots, and this is the one that I used. Honestly, it was overpriced. It was $40, and I really didn't think it was going to be anything special. It takes half frame shots at the vertical orientation. So a 36 frame roll of 35mm film gives you actually 72. But after I developed the roll from that photo duel, I was really surprised how well they turned out, and I enjoyed shooting with this camera so much. It's small, it's light, and the images are just fantastic for their size. I also really like that it defaults to the portrait orientation, as I find that I've been favoring that in my photography lately. The other thing was how well the light meter performed. It doesn't use a battery, and yet it's able to provide great auto exposure. I don't know what sort of voodoo magic you're using, Yashica, but I am at the same time impressed and terrified by your powers. But the thing I like most is just that it's just so small, and that it's super quiet. This is a really great camera to use on the street. But speaking of small cameras, we've got to talk about this guy. I absolutely love this camera for so many reasons, but the biggest reason is size. This is the Rollei 35, and comparing it to the Yashica Mini, you'll see that it's even smaller, and yet it takes full 35 frame shots. How do you get all of that in here? How do the Germans do it? It doesn't make sense to me. It defies physics. The lens collapses so it can fit into your coat pocket, not your vest pocket. That's a different camera, if you'll recall. There are a few different versions of this camera. This is the oldest and first version, which was made in Germany. It has a beautiful Zeiss Tessar 3.5 40mm lens, which is really a wonder at the time, and even by today's standards is really good. Eventually they moved to a factory in Singapore and downgraded the lens. But then eventually they started using the Zeiss lenses again with the Sonar 2.8 version. But that's really expensive, and the 2.8 aperture is really tough on this camera, and that is because it is not a rangefinder, it's a viewfinder, meaning you can't focus with the rangefinder to get that parallax or split screen when you focus. Instead, you have to gauge the distance with your super mutant powers and then dial that in right here. Since that's super hard for me, even with practice, I prefer the 3.5 aperture lens over the 2.8 because it forces me into safer depths of fields. But anyway, I really love this camera. There's always room for it in some random side pocket of any camera bag, and so I often bring it along to whatever shoot, just because I can. Okay, so now we get into my top 3 cameras, my workhorses. These are the ones I shoot with on a regular basis. And this first one is my film photography beast of burden. This is the Nikon FE2. This is pretty much the camera I'm gonna use when I need a great light meter, a wide range of solid film camera lenses, and just a reliable, pleasant to use camera in general. This thing has been battered, abused. It's got beautiful brassing, blessing its body. Apparently I like B words today. Nikon made what I consider to be the most durable, pleasant to use, reliable, and consistent film cameras of any manufacturer, and the FE2 is just my favorite. And I also just absolutely love Nikon film era glass. It's so good. This lens, for instance, is one of my all-time favorites. This is the Nikkor 24mm f2. Also, quintessentially good is the 50mm 1.4 AIS. Just really love these lenses. This next one I'm not going to say very much about here because I have another video coming out soon about why I love this one so much. This is my Bronica Zenzi Trs. These were what I'd call the budget or entry-level medium format cameras that were built in the late 70s to the 90s. There always seems to be tons of these on eBay, especially in Japan. They still really are, in my opinion, the best entry point into 120 photography. It's a plastic body, but it's solid. It can take some punishment. The image quality I get from the 75 f2.8 Zenzi lens is excellent, but the real reason I love this camera isn't for shooting medium format film. I mean, medium format is great, but I actually don't shoot much 120 film through this guy. This camera is special for an entirely different reason that I will not reveal at this time. You're gonna have to wait for my next video about film cameras where all shall be revealed. And finally, we have my favorite and most expensive film camera. This is my Leica M3 double stroke version with the really amazing Voigtlander 50mm 1.2 Nocton. This is an amazing camera I pull out when I just want to get my Bresson on and feel all artsy. There's something magical, almost mystical about holding a Leica. I feel like when I hold this camera, it makes me better, a better photographer. I think if you hold it close, just listen, just hold it. Just let those Leica juices flow into your soul. Okay, I lied. There is actually one more camera. Actually, 11 more cameras that I do own. This is 11 of the very same model camera, and that is the Konica Auto S2. And there's a very good reason why I have a fleet of these, which again, I'm not gonna reveal at this juncture, but you should know that it's for a very important and special reason. And I had to repair half of these, had to learn how to do it. Some of them had aperture problems, some of them had rangefinder issues, some of them were stuck in time release mode. Yeah, it was a lot of work, but all will be revealed, I promise. So I hope that I've given you enough reason to subscribe. Either that or I just annoyed you, and I apologize for that, but that's it, guys. That's my 2019 film camera collection. I really am looking forward to using all this gear more this year, getting out there and getting some great photos, and I look forward to having you along for the ride. So long live film. We'll talk to you again real soon.